Hello! In this video I'll be breaking down my entire NES Tetris gaming setup and going over everything you would need in order to play NES Tetris for yourself, record your games, participate in online tournaments, and prepare for the real-life tournaments. I've had a lot of people reach out to me asking what I would recommend, so hopefully this video answers your questions. The good news is the setup isn't nearly as difficult or expensive as you might think. Depending on where you live or what you have already, it's possible that everything that I would consider the essentials could cost you less than $60 US. However, of course, not everybody has the same resources available. I certainly didn't have access to most of the stuff on my list when I first started playing. So with that in mind, I'll be talking about every piece of equipment in 3 different categories. In addition to the essentials, which is what I would consider the baseline equipment to be fully adequate, I'll also have the category of in a pinch, which is what you can use if you're on a budget or don't have access to something in your region, and the works, which is how you can take things to the next level if you're truly invested. With most of these items, I've started out in the in a pinch category and gradually worked my way up to the works. So I'll let you know the costs and benefits of each level and how much it's worth it. So let's begin. To start out with, you're going to need the game itself and a gaming system to play it on. In a pinch, a ROM running in an emulator will allow you to play the game. Using an emulator simplifies the discussion of much of the other gear because you'd be using your computer as a gaming system, your monitor as a screen, and in most cases your keyboard as a controller. An emulator does give you the ability to practice and become skilled, and you can use an emulator to participate in the online tournaments. Additionally, since some of the gear I'll be talking about can be region specific, it's possible that an emulator might be your only practical option. However, there are some caveats to be aware of. If your aspiration is to play in the in-person tournaments and you're using your keyboard as your controller, you're going to have to switch to a Nintendo controller for the event. If you're used to playing like this, switching to this can be difficult. I've seen some keyboard players place their controller flat and bring in a sticky pad to keep the controller in place on the table in front of them. Or if there is no space on the table, have to bring in an additional mini table or small platform to place their controller on. So it's something to be prepared for at the very least. And then there's also the issue of emulators being in kind of a legal gray area. I'll link to an article that discusses the topic in the description, but basically I can't talk about how to get an emulator or set one up here. So what about the essentials category? Well, you just buy an original cartridge. Fortunately, a boatload of these were made back in the day, so getting one is super cheap. I got mine for $5 at a local retro gaming store. They're also available in abundance on eBay. But this is the first point where it has to be clarified that there are actually technically 2 versions of the game, NTSC Tetris and PAL Tetris. They're identical in almost every way except for that they're optimized for different frame rate standards in different parts of the world. NTSC is mainly North America and Japan, while PAL is most of Europe, Africa, Southeast Asia, and Australia, and South America is split down the middle. As a result, different tournaments use different versions. The World Championships and Classic Tetris Monthlies use NTSC, while the European Championships use PAL. I'll discuss it more in depth in a future video, but basically the difference in frame rates results in a huge difference in how you calibrate your aggression when playing the game. So if you're aspiring to play in a particular tournament, it's important that you get the right version of the game. And for the record, I'm using NTSC. So for the works, how can you improve on getting a cartridge? Well, you could buy the original box it comes in too, which has a little instruction booklet that mostly includes stuff you probably already know, along with the real version of the fake meme that Jeopardy used that one time, Smash Boy. And the one I bought secondhand for $10 also has the original owner's high score in it. For someone who probably played without any knowledge of the tournaments or advanced strategy and had to figure it out all on their own, that's actually not too bad. Pretty cool. But by far the biggest simple thing you can do to upgrade your experience is getting a Game Genie. This allows you to input codes that transform different aspects of the game for training and achievement purposes. The most common one used at high-level play is ENEOOGEZ, which removes the 999,999 score cap by displaying numbers in the first digit beyond 9 with the alphabet, thus allowing players to track scores higher than 1,000,000. But there are tons of others, such as a code to skip waiting through a rocket sequence, a code that allows you to start on level 29, and much more. Now you're going to need a system to play it on, and it doesn't necessarily have to be an original NES. The one I use is the Retrobit RES Plus Super Retro. It only costs $21.80 on Amazon, and in my experience, it plays an NES cart nearly indistinguishably from an original NES. The only difference that's popped up is the slightly different pitch in the sound effects. And this is one category where the essentials and the works categories are are kind of flexible because for the works I would put, an original NES. But it's possible you or a relative already have one, which would make the process of getting one very simple. Or you might be able to snag one for pretty cheap on eBay if you're lucky. So anyways, the NES is the original, authentic experience. But I consider the Super Retro a fine failsafe option if getting an NES is difficult. And again, your console is another piece of equipment where you want to make sure you're getting one that's optimized for NTSC or PAL. Next, you're gonna need a controller. Now, if you're using an emulator, you're probably gonna be using a keyboard. But since when you're using an emulator, your computer is basically your gear, I'm gonna be breaking down the future categories mainly for console play. And with controllers, if your aspiration is to play in the World Championships, it's important to know that in the rules, only original unmodified Nintendo controllers are allowed. And that's relevant because, as I noted in my 2018 experience video, even though they provide controllers at every station, virtually every serious competitor brings their own. Because in a game where a move has to be made in a 30th or a 60th of a second, having a controller where you're familiar with its feel and sensitivity makes all the difference. I've used the same controller at every tournament since I started playing 2 years ago, and I've gotten very comfortable with it. I would consider having a Nintendo controller in the Essentials category. Now, when you're playing at home or online, of course, there's nothing to prevent you from using an off-brand controller. The Super Retro I mentioned earlier comes with its own controllers, which aren't that bad. After coming home from the 2019 CTWC, I actually started playing on this one in order to reduce wear and tear on the one I primarily use for tournaments. But given how cheap you can typically get an NES controller, definitely get one if you have the option. I think I got mine for about 10 bucks. As for the works, basically it would come down to finding an NES controller that's optimal for you if the first one you get isn't that good. As they aren't made anymore, used NES controllers come in varying quality. Some people buy a bunch of them and meticulously clean and refurbish the best ones. If you really want to splurge, you can try and find one in mint condition. Even this isn't a guarantee that a controller will work the best for you though. It's just something you'll get a sense of over time. And then there's what screen to use. This is a unique category in that the in a pinch option is almost universally more expensive than the Essentials category, mainly because the in a pinch option is the one you're most likely to already have, an LCD or flat screen TV. The item in the Essentials category is actually a CRT or box TV. Now, it's definitely possible to play well on an LCD TV. I played my first few months and got my first half max out on one, and Harry Hong got his first max out on one as well way back in the day. But if you play on an LCD, you are going to be putting yourself at a bit of a disadvantage due to the delay on the display of an LCD over a CRT. To illustrate this, I hooked up my console to a CRT and an LCD screen with a cable splitter to show the difference you're dealing with. In this test, the LCD lagged behind the CRT by about 1/6 of a second. On level 19 speeds, that's huge, and massively impacts your reaction time and ability to adjust for misdrops and mistakes. In my experience, I ran into a complete wall trying to learn level 19 on an LCD, and couldn't ever play much past the transition until I switched to a CRT. And even if you do learn how to play on level 19 speeds on an LCD, if you eventually want to show up in person to the tournaments, they're going to be played on CRTs, and it's going to be very difficult to adjust to the different timing if you're not used to it. The fortunate thing about CRTs is that to a lot of people they're junk and next to worthless, so in a lot of areas it's very easy to get one for extremely cheap. I think I accidentally overpaid for my CRT. Back when I was thinking about getting one, I didn't really know where to look, so I hopped on eBay, bid for one for $20, and then had to pay $30 for shipping since it's so heavy. And then I realized when I looked on Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist in my area that people were giving them away for $5 or free. Whoops. And then to connect it to your console, you just need an RCA cable. And if you don't already have one, it's like a few dollars. Unfortunately, I've heard from some people that it's very difficult or expensive to get a CRT where they're from, so best of luck in finding one. So what do you do for the works? Like a controller, it's basically about finding a CRT that's right for you. Even though my CRT is on the smaller end, I actually like it because it's about the same size as the ones they use at the World Championships. So I feel like it prepares me in a way for playing on their screens. Of course, if you're just playing at home and find that a bigger CRT works for you, then get a bigger CRT. There's also some CRTs that display different colors better than others. Level 17 with its dark purple hues is infamous for being hard to see on most screens. but on my CRT, level 17 looks just fine. It's level 16's dark gray hues that don't display well. However, these issues can be mitigated with Game Genie codes. If you really want to dive into it, there's a CRT gaming subreddit with advice on how to get the best CRT. One of their tips is to go to old TV stations or studios that have professional grade CRTs that they might just want to get rid of. And as a last note, along with the console, you'll want to make sure your CRT is compatible with NTSC or PAL, depending on which version you get. So now you've got your setup, but how do you record your games? Well, in a pinch, you can just use your camcorder or your cell phone. Jonas used a phone to capture his first recorded level 19 max out way back in the day, and Josh uses a mirror to have a fancy one-shot setup that includes his face and his game in the same frame. But a lot of camcorders have built-in time limits on how long they can record, which can cause your recordings to be stopped at inconvenient moments, and of course, there's a certain amount of quality lost by recording this way. Even though cell phone cameras have improved substantially over the years, you won't be able to participate in online tournaments if a secondary camera is your video source. You're going to want to capture directly what's on screen for the best quality. Harry Hong originally recorded his first max out on a VHS, but chances are you're going to want immediate digital access. Unfortunately, the options don't have to be expensive. EasyCap, which is the capture card that I use along with many others in the NES Tetris community, only costs $10.99 on Amazon. And the setup isn't too difficult. You're just going to need 2 additional cables, another RCA cord and an RCA splitter. So first, install the software that comes on the little CD, and then you're going to plug your 2 RCA cords into the splitter. Then this end goes in your console, this end you plug into your screen, and this end you plug the EasyCap in, and then insert it into the USB port on your computer, and boom! There you go. As for the works, there are some more expensive capture cards out there, some of which come with their own basic recording and editing software, but ultimately, I don't think any of these options are super necessary, mainly because of the price of the next category, recording and streaming software. This is what you'll be able to use to record your games, participate in online tournaments, and optionally run your own live streams and build a following. The software of choice of pretty much everyone in the community is OBS, an open source program that rings up at the grand old price of free, and is super easy to use. You just load it up, click the plus on the bottom left to create a new scene, then click the plus on the bottom middle to create a new video capture device. It's going to be an OEM capture device. Then you just resize it to where you want it to be, make sure that your video output settings are what you want them to be, and then you can record. Once you've got all this set up, it's a fairly simple process to participate in the online tournaments as well. The classic Tetris Monthly, for example, just has you stream to a Twitch page and then use a stencil to line up your game footage exactly to a template that will then be used to cut out individual elements and place them in an aesthetically pleasing format for the final broadcast. And if there's any confusion, the online tournaments have pages and forums dedicated to helping you through technical issues and any setup questions you may have. So if recording and participating in tournaments is all you ever need or want to do, OBS has you covered with a nice streamlined interface. However, if you're going to host Tetris live streams of your own, I'd move it down to the in a pinch category only because there's an even better free option, Streamlabs OBS, which is a combined program for OBS and Streamlabs, a live streaming collection of widgets such as chat boxes, notification alerts, etc. It also integrates a lot of the live streaming interface into OBS, which reduces the need for doing it from your browser. And I'm showing examples from Twitch, by the way, because although there are other platforms available, almost everybody who streams NES Tetris right now uses Twitch. It's where all the networking is. And really, the only big reason you would need to upgrade to paid software is if you're like Trey and you're running a professional level live broadcast event with the need for tons of different inputs, multiple streams to multiple platforms all at once. Although let's be real, if you're like Trey, you're on the level of writing your own custom software to do things. You know everything, you don't need to be watching this video, I should be learning from you. And the last 2 categories of equipment I'll be talking about are webcams and microphones for live streaming. Now, I should emphasize that these are definitely not a requirement. If you prefer not to be on the camera or mic because it's a hassle to get ready or for privacy reasons, especially in this day and age, there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. And in almost every online tournament, webcams are optional. However, if you do have a webcam or mic, tournament organizers will like it and appreciate it because it helps add to the visual appeal of the live stream. And it can have a huge impact in building and connecting with your own audience. And because your webcam feed is typically going to be very small on your screen, you don't need an HD webcam in most cases. A cheap one or the one built into your laptop should work just fine, along with a cheap microphone or a microphone built into your headset. If you want to have a more webcam-centric setup like Joseph, or you plan to use your webcam as a camera for recording, an HD webcam might be worth investing in. This is the webcam I have. My girlfriend got me this one for Christmas, and for $34, this is the quality you get from it. It's pretty good. A good microphone can improve overall quality as well. The audio you're now hearing is from the microphone I use, which is the Blue Yeti. It's a very popular upper mid-range option in the industry. It's important to know though that your quality is going to be dependent on how close you are to the mic. So the next thing I'll be investing in is an arm for this thing so I don't have to lean in. So that's my setup. Some closing remarks. These are my personal recommendations based on what I've used. I was not sponsored by anyone to include anything in this video. It's also possible my gear recommendations may improve in the future, or I'll be recommended something better by someone in the comments. So I'll try to keep the description updated with any new information. Happy playing, and I'll see you in the next video.